that because of my learned response, because of the habit that I had gotten into for so long, I interpreted that feeling in the pit of my stomach to be guilt, to be condemnation. And that was not the truth.
Hello and welcome to Healing Trauma Mamas. I'm your host, Madon Wingo. Thank you for joining us as we share in our stories and experiences of healing from childhood traumas and birth traumas. Listen as we discuss our struggles, our failures, our strengths and our victories, and all those lessons we've learned along the way.
I just want to thank everybody. First of all, we're celebrating 2 years. I didn't even realize that 2 years had come up till somebody mentioned it to me, and I was quite surprised. It's really hard for me to believe that it's been 2 years since we started the Healing Trauma Mamas podcast, and this is episode number 42. That's just wild, and I'm just so incredibly thankful. And so thank you guys for making it such an amazing podcast. Thank you for all the listeners, and thank you to all the guests. If there's anything that I've been learning again lately, and I guess really just emphasizing lately, it has been the power of our testimonies, the power of sharing each other's journey. And I've seen that, and it's been so amazing. We recently had a Zoom conference call that anybody could jump on, and we were sharing about VBAC recently to discuss. And I just found it so powerful that getting to hear somebody else's story, somebody who has been through it, somebody who successfully did what you wanted to do, how that empowered those mamas, how it encouraged them so much to just be able to just continue going toward their goal, to continue in their plan to just to have their VBAC. And it encouraged them and their partners so much just by hearing from other people who had been through it. So I just wanted to just remind you all how important it is to hear each other's testimonies, to hear about each other's journeys. I just think that it is just, it's exponentially important. Let's put it that way. Like it's so important. So I want to remind you, share your journey with others. Share when you've had successes, and share through the hard times too. Like it's so important. That makes me really think about community and how important community is. Whether it's in a certain area, like obviously as a midwife, there's a community of like midwives that we get together, and then that branches out to being a mama and my amazing children, and I have a community of other mamas that I gather with. There's gonna be these different groups of community that we are to live life together with, and we're to be real with each other. And again, just the importance of walking with each other through our lives. So I want to remind everybody that share your journey, don't be isolated. So as we think about a trauma perspective, this is Healing Trauma Mamas, and we often talk about trauma and the ways in which each of us heal, which is not one specific way. Healing comes in lots of different ways for lots of different people. So I just want, and even in different times, like there's been different ways of healing from different types of trauma for myself. So, and I'm sure if you've experienced trauma, it looks a little different for you. And I want to acknowledge that it's different, and also acknowledge that, what worked for you in a certain area may not work for me. It may be a little different of how I grow and heal in that area. So we're all very unique, and our experiences are very unique. And so that it brings me to something I wanted to talk about today. And it's really what has been so on my heart. I also want to, this is a live podcast recording, and so I just want to thank those that have joined us, and acknowledge that I am looking at two cameras, and this is really new for me. So I'm trying hard to do this well. If you have any tips or anything, this is a completely solo run podcast. And so if you have some skills that you'd love to share, let me know. I would love some help. Um, Anyway, so this thing that has been on my mind so much, I had something that happened a couple of weeks ago that really just blew my mind, like about myself. It really blew my mind because I realized something that had been happening for years and I didn't know it. And once I've opened up this thing that has been happening, I feel like, oh my goodness, changes everything. This changes so much for myself in my walk and the growth and the healing that I've, of course, been so thankful to the Lord for. But so I'm going to kind of share a little bit of a story of what happened and just share with you like this this event that happened. And the biggest thing about it is I just want to share it was me interpreting my emotions incorrectly. It blows my mind. So let me kind of tell you what happened and how this came just to light for me. So maybe you're somebody like me and this will help you because it's helped me so much just in the couple of weeks that I now have understood what was happening. So I had a busy day ahead of me and I had got everything ready. I was going out to do a busy day of prenatals, and those who have listened to me on the podcast probably know, but I'm a rural Texas midwife. So, and I do all home visits. So what this means is I have long days on the road, which I love and I am so thankful for. But so I was getting my day prepared and I was going to visit a client who lived quite a ways away from me. And I had prepared a bunch of things for her visit. And my son helped me pack the car. And I went to grab my water and leave the house. And as I took a few steps from the table towards the outside door, I had this bad feeling come upon me, like it was in my gut. Like I had this bad feeling that just kind of came on. And so I kind of stopped for just a second to think about this feeling. And immediately I have this feeling of condemnation that you have done something wrong. And I was just thinking to myself, like, what did you do wrong this morning? You did something really wrong this morning. Maybe it was that email that you sent earlier. And the email was to a person who I appreciate and respect our relationship. And so I was thinking, maybe I messed up that relationship. And I immediately went to some worst case things like, so you didn't speak well in that email. Maybe you didn't get your point across. And so now this person isn't going to have the relationship with you that you expected. And this is going to mess everything up. And so I go to condemnation and guilt. And I just still walked out of the house and I still tearing this knot in the pit of my stomach. And it was really, really bothering me. And on my way out of town, I had planned to stop to have coffee with a friend before I headed out for my whole day. And so I stopped with this friend to have coffee with her. And in the middle of our conversation, I ended up saying, hey, can we stop? Because this thing is bothering me so badly. I can't even concentrate on our conversation over coffee. So let me send another email because I feel like maybe I need to fix something that I messed up. So I go and I send this email and I'm thinking, okay, if I take the time to send this email to fix whatever it is that I messed up this morning, because in my gut, I just feel like I did something wrong. I really feel guilty and I have no clue why, right? that's the first thing I pointed to was this email I had sent that morning. But so I send the email, and so I'm thinking, okay, great. Now I'm going to feel better. Now I'm going to feel like this weight is off my shoulders, and hopefully this feeling in the pit of my stomach will go away. But it didn't. It didn't go away. It was still there. And so I couldn't enjoy the coffee with my friend. And so I went ahead and got in the car and I headed on to do my prenatal day like I was planning to. So this feeling in the pit of my stomach just stayed there the whole time. And it just felt awful. It felt bad. And the other thing I can tell you about it is it felt so familiar. It felt like this is that feeling that I get when I feel like I have messed up, when I feel like I did something wrong, like I'm going to be maybe even punished or disciplined for something. And I'm a 40-year-old woman. But this is the feeling that I had. Like I have really made a mistake that I have and so I'm immediately condemning myself and thinking about all these awful things maybe I did. So this feeling doesn't go away. And I'm driving. And like I said, this is a long drive. So I've got a lot of time to think and pray in the car. And I ended up putting on a podcast episode. And it was Jamie Winship talking, which those who have listened to the podcast know I've spoke about him a lot. I really enjoy his teaching on walking in your true identity. If you haven't gone and listened to any of his podcast episodes, or you can go find him on YouTube, and he has an amazing book. I happen to have it right here just because it's my favorite, called Living Fearless. This book will transform your life. So I try to listen to him on YouTube or a podcast episode with him as often as several times during the week. So I happened to see the podcast episode to listen to, and it was about emotions. And I thought, well, that's a great idea since right now I'm struggling with this really bad emotion that is not easing up. It's not easing up. And I listened to what he had to say, and he was talking about interpreting emotions, which honestly, I hadn't ever thought that much about before. I never thought about the way in which I interpret an emotion. And maybe you haven't either. But we all do it all the time. And it's a learned response. We've learned it from our childhood, how to interpret different emotions, right? So things will come up and we're interpreting it that is, I feel bad, or that is, I feel good. And that makes me excited, We have all these different emotions that happen. And those of us who have dealt with trauma in our past, a big emotion that comes up is guilt, shame, or condemnation. Somewhere in that realm, somewhere I have messed up. I made an error and it's bad and people are going to be affected by it. And maybe I'm going to ruin a relationship. Maybe I'm going to be punished. Maybe I hurt somebody. There's all kinds of different things. And we interpret those emotions that come on us. So he brought this idea to my mind that I had never really thought about before. I hadn't thought about interpreting emotions. And I really had never thought about, am I interpreting emotions correctly? Have you ever thought about that? Have you thought about how you are interpreting your emotions, and is it the truth? Because on this podcast, I know that we have talked so many times about speaking the truth and thinking the truth and getting rid of the lies that we hear all the time. The lies that tell us we're not good enough, we're failures, fear, and all these things. I think I've shared before, I used to have a sign all the time. I felt like that was saying, you're a failure, you're a failure. So every time something happened, I immediately was, you're a failure. And I thank the Lord that I am not that way anymore. He has shown me that's not who I am. And that's a lie. That's not who I am. So I had never thought about, am I interpreting emotions with truth? So as I went about my day and I'm thinking about this, and I still have this knot in my stomach, I still have this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach, and it is not going away. And I get to my client's house and I go into her home. And you know what I realize? I realize I didn't have everything that I needed. I didn't have all the things that I had ready to bring to her. I didn't have important things that I needed to bring to her. And I went about my time with her. But as I left, I got in my car and I got to thinking, wait, where were those items? And those items were right a few steps away from when I got that feeling in the pit of my stomach. So as soon as I started walking away from those things that I really needed for my day, I got this feeling in the pit of my stomach. I got this emotion. And now what I should have done is stopped and said, wait, what is my body trying to tell me right now? What is going on? And what I shouldn't have done is went straight to condemnation. And I have done something wrong. It must have been that email I sent earlier today. And I started doubting myself, having self-doubt. And I started thinking that you messed up. And this emotion that I was feeling was a feeling of just like, you're wrong. You're doing something wrong. But I was interpreting that emotion incorrectly. And I'm so thankful I was listening to Jamie Winship talk about that when this all happened. And I really, it's so amazing because what my body was in me to an issue, to something I needed to fix right then in that moment. Literally, I walked 3 steps away from the item that I need that was going to make such a difference in my day. And I got that feeling. And if I'd have just stopped and said, wait, okay, I know this feeling before. This feeling is telling me that I'm forgetting something. If that had been how I had interpreted that feeling, then I would have fixed it. I would have turned around. I would have seen what I was missing. And I would have been able to make such a difference in my day. That because of my learned response, because of the habit that I had gotten into for so long, I interpreted that feeling in the pit of my stomach to be guilt, to be condemnation. And that was not the truth. This has been such a revelation for me. I am now stopping when I have any type of negative emotions and thinking and saying, okay, is this the truth? Is the way I'm interpreting this emotion, is it the truth? Because it could be that I have conditioned myself for so long to interpret that emotion in a negative way, and it was wrong the whole time. So I want to encourage you today, to stop and think. This is a learned trauma response, and we've learned it from probably when we were really young. That's most likely. I know as I stop and I think about it, I am sure that's where I learned it from. When I was very young, I walked on eggshells most of my life. I was always there was always a fear of being punished. There was always a fear of stepping outside of the bounds that I was supposed to be in, the very strict lines that I was supposed to be in. And I think that out of that, not even to mention all the other types of trauma that happened, but even just out of that aspect, that this interpreting these emotions, which God gave us to help us. He didn't give me that to make me feel guilt and shame and condemnation. He gave that to me to help me in my walk. And if I interpret it correctly, that's what it's going to do. That would have helped me so much on that day when I was going to do my prenatals. It would have been amazing if I'd learned and known how to interpret that correctly. But because of my learned response, I had the wrong interpretation, and it completely ruined a lot of my day, honestly. I wasn't able to enjoy the cup of coffee with my friend. I was the whole drive thinking I've done something wrong. I second-guessed myself in that conversation over email that I had. So it really messed up, it ruined a lot of the opportunities I had for community and conversation with people throughout the day. All because I was interpreting the emotion inside me that God gave me in the wrong light. So I want to encourage you, if that is something that resonates with you, that you might be doing as well, Like, stop and think about it. Is this actually what this emotion is telling me? Is this the truth? Or is it another lie that I have believed so long because I have felt that feeling so many times before and been punished? Because I have felt that feeling so many times before and felt like I was wrong, even though maybe I wasn't at the time, or felt like there was so much on me that was that was a correct response, but it wasn't. So thanks for joining me today for this live podcast episode. I really appreciate all you listeners out there. Thanks for making this 2 years of Healing Trauma Mamas. I'm just amazed that we've been able to do it for this long, and I look forward to the next year, all the amazing women and even maybe a few men coming on this podcast and telling their stories and sharing in their journey, and us coming together as a community and growing together in our healing process. And I just thank everyone for that. And as I end the podcast episode, all those live on Instagram, I just want to give this an opportunity that I'm here right now, and I'm happy to do a Q&A. If you've got any questions or a comment that you would like to give me, I would love to stay on here live for a few minutes and answer any of those. I thank everybody for coming on. Thank you, Brittany, student midwife Brittany. Thanks for joining, and thank you so much for joining. And Lizzie, really appreciate that. We've had a big increase on our Instagram lately, and I'm excited for what's in the future. Excited that we might have an impact on more people. And that's what I am really praying that this podcast does, that it impacts others, that it encourages people on their healing journey. You mamas out there listening, seriously, I want to encourage you so much on your journey, that there is healing. You have such a new life ahead of you. As somebody who was really, really stuck in her trauma, I just want to say, when you're able to come out of it, and when you're able to go through those healing processes, that it's amazing what's on the other side. And I want to encourage each one of you that you can have that.
Thank you for listening. May you be encouraged and strengthened by what you've heard today. Remember, you are dearly loved by your Creator, so be who He created you to be. May you go in peace, friends. Till next time, Shalom.